Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the first post-game recap of the 2021-22 season. We're going to go with runs recaps this year as the nickname on it. But nonetheless, we saw, of course, the Nets play the Bucks and the Golden State Warriors play the Lakers on night one. And as much as neither of the games were as close as maybe some people would have liked them, there was still some fascinating things to see from these teams on opening night and some very interesting signs and takeaways that we can take. Ultimately, I'm going to talk about the Nets and the Bucks game first, and then we will proceed with the Warriors and the Lakers. The Bucks looked very good tonight. Of course, it's only one game. I'm not going to overreact, but there are still some things that we can take away from tonight as we can see as meaningful down the road. Ultimately, Giannis didn't look like he was taking a step back at all after winning a ring, after getting their rings tonight. Sometimes that can get to their head. There's a lot of history with teams getting their ring and their banner raising on opening night and not doing that well. But ultimately, that was not a concern for Giannis, for this Milwaukee Bucks team. They played extremely well. Giannis looked as good as ever. His free throw shooting looked way better. He's changed his routine. He looked way more comfortable at the free throw line. Shot 7 of 9 from there tonight. Dropped 32 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists. He was dominant as ever, finishing well at the rim, left hand, right hand, a couple of Euro steps in there, you name it. He was extremely impactful. A couple of blocks on the defensive end as well, with some very good help defense. Giannis was extremely good. Chris Middleton had a good scoring night as well. Grayson Allen ended up being the starting two guard. I wasn't certain whether it was going to be him or Pat Connaughton, but ultimately it ended up being Grayson Allen. Pat Connaughton himself had a very good game off of the bench, shooting 4-9 from deep, putting up 20 points himself. And Jordan Nwora, who played 26 minutes off the bench as well, put up 15 points of his own. His defense still, of course, is the thing that needs to improve. But ultimately, in offense, it looks like he's going to be able to be a contributing member of this Bucks team, which is important for them because Jrue Holiday went out with a heel contusion in this game. He was out. It remains to be seen how long he is injured for. But ultimately, George Hill is going to have to fill into that role while Pat Connaughton and Jordan Nwora play some heavy minutes until then, because they have some significant injuries on this team right now. Of course, with DiVincenzo still out, with Bobby Portis still out. So it's good that they have some key bench pieces because they're going to have to log some heavy minutes, especially if Jrue Holiday is going to miss a couple of weeks this heel injury. Brook Lopez looked good on defense tonight, although his offensive game wasn't anything spectacular. But ultimately, it was a very good performance by the Bucks. They looked good. They put in a lot of energy, and they played with a lot of intensity, got a lot of offensive rebounds, and did not turn the ball over much at all, especially for an opening night game, only having 7 turnovers. For the Nets, KD did his thing. He looked very good. He put up 32 and 11 on very good efficiency. Harden was fine tonight, but he was a little bit sloppy with the ball at times, and not the most efficient. His threes were good. He was a solid three-point shooter tonight and got them a few rebounds, but ultimately didn't do too much outside of that. The biggest bright point for Brooklyn was the fact that Patty Mills was 7 of 7 from deep for 21 points off of the bench. Patty Mills is going to be very, very crucial to their bench unit this season, and ultimately carried their bench unit tonight as he had 21 of 25 bench points for Brooklyn, pointing to the fact that their bench needs to do more than they did tonight moving forward. Nicholas Claxton wasn't overly impressive to me tonight. His energy didn't look anywhere near as high as it was pretty much at all last year. His effort on the defensive end wasn't great. He had a few plays where his energy and quickness to get back on defense was just not there, and he just lackadaisically jogged back down the court. So ultimately, I wasn't very impressed with him tonight, and the negative 15 plus minus he has doesn't help. And there were some interesting rotational decisions tonight as well. Bruce Brown only played 4 minutes, and personally, I wouldn't have been surprised if he started at the 2, but it said Blake Griffin started at the 4, with Nick Claxton at the 5 and KD moving up to the 3. So ultimately, Bruce Brown only playing 4 minutes is weird, but then in turn, Javon Carter playing 19 and James Johnson playing 21 is quite interesting. Those guys combined to have 1 point, with one James Johnson free throw being the answer. And James Johnson's there for defense, and he didn't even give you any rebounds. So I don't know about playing him 21 minutes when Paul Millsap is there, when of course Bruce Brown isn't in the same position, but can play the 2 or the 3 and is only getting 4 minutes. That's a bit of a weird one to me, so I definitely have some concerns about their bench rotation moving forward. Blake Griffin, I think, needs to be more assertive on this team now with the Kyrie Irving not being on the team. I think they need more from him offensively, and ultimately him only taking 5 shots tonight, passing up a few good opportunities on the offensive end, I think is something that moving forward he will have to look to be more aggressive with. But ultimately, the bench unit for this Brooklyn Nets team didn't look good tonight. I have some concerns about their rotation. Ultimately, things that can be fixed and achieved long term. But definitely some things that the Nets seem to be looking at and have some legitimate thought and concern about moving forward. Not as concern of whether they're going to be title contenders or not, but definitely some things they need to figure out specifically with their bench unit and where they're going to get the scoring from outside of KD and James Harden. But let's move along and talk about the last game of the night, the Golden State Warriors and the LA Lakers. Golden State surprised me tonight. I thought the Lakers were going to be in a much more comfortable spot to win this game, especially when AD was so dominant early on. I thought the Lakers were going to be completely dominated based on size, as they were in moments, but I don't think the Lakers took advantage of that as well as they could have. Ultimately, Kevon Looney only played 15 minutes, and Nemanja Bjelica played the most minutes at the center spot. And let me tell you, Nemanja Bjelica, I don't know if I just haven't watched him enough playing with the Kings, and I just haven't given him the time that I should have watched and that he's deserved. But he was very good tonight. Very good, specifically on the offensive end. I don't love him as a center. Does have a bit of size and a bit of length, but he's not exactly a great rim protector by any stretch. He can give you a bit of interior defense, though, and was a solid rebounder on the night, had 11 points, but 11 rebounds, pardon me. But I don't love his fit as a guy who's playing a lot of center minutes for you, especially against guys like DeAndre Jordan, specifically AD. But ultimately, he held his own. And offensively, he was so impactful. You get the spacing that he provides. He only shot 1 3 on the night and made that three. But he has the ability to space the floor. But he was extremely good taking guys off the dribble tonight, taking them off the dribble and either finishing inside or creating for others, creating gaps for others, creating shooting lanes for others, or just setting up others either inside or on the perimeter. He finished with 4 assists, but his playmaking ability and options that he created and spaces that he created on the offense tonight were extremely valuable, having that spacing at the 5 spot. It's not something the Warriors have really had, of course, with James Wiseman and Kevon Looney, but ultimately that was very crucial to the Warriors tonight. Damian Lee provided some good value off of the bench, putting up 15. Andre Iguodala looked very good off the bench as well, being a good 3-and-D guy for them. But ultimately, Curry and Poole didn't even shoot that great tonight, and they had 17 turnovers as a team, and they were still able to get this win against the Lakers. They did out-rebound the Lakers, which does not make sense size-wise, and is something that the Lakers definitely should have been better at. And ultimately, they just didn't take the opportunity that was presented with them and didn't commit enough to going inside against this team that didn't have as much size in the Lakers. But as I mentioned, Curry only shot 5 of 21 and Jordan Poole 8 of 18, although Jordan Poole did have a very good second half, although had a lot of weird wonky shots in the first half. Put it behind him and bounced back in the second half, which is a very good sign for a young player. And ultimately, it was the bench that did extremely well for the Golden State Warriors. Andrew Wiggins had some good moments throughout the game as well and finished with 12 points on a couple threes and gave them some good length on the defensive end. Draymond continued to do a little bit of everything and be a good defensive presence. But ultimately, this Golden State team was led by their bench. And as I mentioned, Nemanja Bjelica was so good tonight. I was very surprised and impressed by him. For Golden State, it was a story of AD and LeBron did their thing. They played extremely well, both of them. I think LeBron really showed that he is still a top 3, top 4, top 5 player in the NBA, no doubt about it. And AD looked a lot more like prime AD, like a good AD. Forget last year. He looked like AD at his finest. Put up 33 points, 11 boards. Hit a 3 late in the game, but ultimately wasn't great from 3. Shot a few more threes and spent a little bit more time around the 3-point line than I would have liked, especially with the size mismatch he had against the Golden State Warriors. But ultimately was very dominant down low, had a few nice mid-range shots, jump shots, catch and shoot pull-ups. He had it all. And LeBron James was very good tonight as well. Extremely efficient, especially in the first half. He started like 6 of 6 or 7 of 7 from the field. Extremely good for mid-range, had a few threes later in the game as well, and continued to do his thing as one of the best in the league. Russ looked very passive tonight, and off of the ball, he didn't really do anything for this team, which is a concern that I have if LeBron does play on ball as much as he did tonight. Rondo arguably played more on ball than Russell Westbrook did tonight, and that's a bit of a concern to me. Russell Westbrook did finish 4-13, 0-4 from deep with only 8 points, 4 assists. It's going to take some time for these 3 guys between AD, LeBron, and Russ to figure it out, but obviously game 1 is not going to be the game. It's going to take a couple of months for them to truly figure that out. But just know Russ and Rondo cannot be on the court at the same time. That just doesn't work. That was pretty clear tonight. Carmelo did his thing off of the bench, putting up 9 points, but ultimately wasn't overly efficient. But it is very evident that he's going to be an important part of this bench moving forward. But ultimately, there wasn't any Great production from from the Lakers tonight off of the bench. Dwight Howard was fine, but did nothing great. Avery Bradley came in against a team that cut him just a couple of days ago and played 8 minutes all in the fourth quarter, and ultimately gave them some really good 3-and-D presence. He hit 2 out of 3 threes that he took. Provided some very good defense against Jordan Poole and Stephen Curry, and ultimately looks to be like someone who's going to be important for this LA Lakers team moving forward, specifically while they have their injuries to Taylor Horton-Tucker and Trevor Ariza. So ultimately, that's my takeaways from night one. Of course, it's only game one. I don't want to overreact to anything, but you can kind of see the roles, the rotations that are starting to take place, and the concerns that teams are going to have to work towards long term. It's not necessarily this is a problem night one, it's going to be a problem all season, but you can start to identify what teams are going to need to improve on, either roster wise or just internally, to figure things out as they move forward through the rest of the season. That being said, be sure to give me your feedback down below in the comment section on the first 2 games of the NBA season. I'll be sure to have another post-game recap out tomorrow night on what is going to be a much more busy slate of games. But I'm glad to have the season back. Let me know your thoughts on the first 2 games of the season down below. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.